Try to remember the exact moment you fell asleep last night. Not getting into bed, not the last thing you remember thinking about. The actual instant you crossed over, from being awake to being gone. The line itself, you can't find it, and here's the first real thing I want to give you tonight, because it isn't a poem. It's how your brain works. You can't remember that moment, because right before it, your brain had switched off the part that saves new memories. There's a little part of your brain, shaped a bit like a seahorse, sitting deep in the middle, whose job is to save your experiences so you can remember them later. Think of it like your brain's save button, and as you fall asleep, that save button switches off a few seconds before the rest of you does. So for a short moment, you're still awake, still having an experience, but nothing is being saved. That's why you can lie there following a thought and never catch the exact place it turned into a dream. The lights were still on. The save button was already off. You were there for your own disappearance. You just weren't allowed to keep it. I start there because it points at something most people never stop to think about. Being conscious isn't one simple switch, on when you're awake, off when you're asleep. It comes in layers. Your mind moves through different states through the night, and a lot of them can be measured on a machine, each with its own pattern, and you spend about a third of your whole life in states that aren't normal waking life. Around 2 hours of every single night, you go somewhere your daytime self can't follow and can't remember, and you walk through the door to all of it every night without ever once seeing the door. And the part almost nobody realizes is this. There are 7 of these layers, 7 levels of consciousness, Ray, and most people spend their whole lives moving between only the lowest 3, being awake, dreaming, and the deep dark of dreamless sleep, never suspecting there's a whole stairway climbing up above them. That's what tonight is really about. Not sleep, being conscious itself. The plain, impossible fact that it feels like something to be you. We're going to take it apart, one layer at a time, from the deep dark you vanish into every night, all the way up to the strange states at the very top of the mind that some people have spent their whole lives chasing. And I owe you one bit of honesty before we start climbing, because it's the promise I'm going to keep the whole way up. The first few levels are solid science, sleep labs, brain scans, stuff you could look up tomorrow and check. I'll show you how we know each one, but the higher steps go past what any machine can measure, into places only deep meditators and mystics and people who've nearly died have ever come back describing. When we get there, I won't hand you their stories dressed up as proven facts. I'll tell you plainly, every single time, where the solid ground ends and the guessing begins. Because I don't need to make any of this bigger than it is. The real story of how being conscious works, the part we can stand on, is already stranger than anything anyone ever made up. So that's where we're headed tonight, all 7 bottom to top. And we start at the very bottom, the lowest of the low, the floor beneath the floor, the one place you go every single night and have never once seen. We begin where you disappear. Every night, for a few hours, you stop existing. I don't mean that as a poem, I mean it almost literally. There's a stretch of every night with no dreams, no pictures, no thoughts, no sense of time passing, and strangest of all, no you. Not a dimmed down you, not a resting you, no you at all. The self just isn't there. And then hours later, it puts itself back together out of nothing. Opens your eyes and carries on as if it had been there the whole time. But before we sit in that emptiness, I want to show you how you get down there, because falling asleep isn't really falling at all. It's a slow, careful descent in stages, and your brain builds it the same way, in the same order, every single night. Almost nobody knows how neat and structured it is. It starts as you drift down, out of being awake into a light, in-between stage, only a minute or 2 deep, where you're not quite awake and not quite asleep, and your thoughts start to loosen into odd little drifting images, This is the stage where sometimes your whole body suddenly jerks and you snap awake with a feeling of falling. That jolt has a name, and while we're not totally sure why it happens, there's a nice guess. As your muscles go loose at the edge of sleep, an old, ancient part of your brain misreads that sudden looseness as actually falling, like an animal losing its grip up in a tree, and fires off an emergency jolt to catch you. A reflex meant for a branch you were never on, going off in your bed. You've felt it 100 times. It's the oldest part of you, refusing for half a second to let you drop. Past that, you sink into the next stage, and here your brain does something clever and protective. It sends out quick little bursts of activity, fast flickers, lasting less than a second, that seem to be doing two jobs at once, sorting through the day's memories and standing guard at the gate of your sleep, turning down the outside world so a random noise doesn't wake you. You spend nearly half the night in this stage, and it's already working on your memory, while it keeps you from being pulled back up. And then deeper still, you hit the floor, the deepest stage of all. Here your whole brain starts to move together, in big, slow, sweeping waves, slow rolling pulses passing across billions of brain cells at once, like a tide coming in over a long beach. This is the deepest, most settled state your brain ever reaches, and it's the moment you are the most completely gone. There's a funny little twist hiding in there, worth noticing as you settle in. The moment your brain is the most in sync, every part of it moving to the same slow beat, more together than at any other time in the whole day, is the exact moment there's no one there to enjoy it. The whole orchestra is perfectly in tune, and the concert hall is empty. Now this trip down, light stage, guard stage, deep stage, isn't a one-way drop. It's a loop. Roughly every 90 minutes, all night long, you ride down into the depths and back up toward the surface, 4, 5, 6 times before morning. And the shape of the night changes as it goes. The deep, dreamless sleep is loaded into the early hours, the first part of the night. The dreaming gets longer and richer toward morning. That's why your longest, most vivid dreams usually come in the last stretch before you wake up. You did the heavy repair work first, and by dawn, your mind is free to wander. There's a real structure to your night, as real as the structure of a building, and you rebuild it floor by floor every time you sleep. So what's all that for? What's happening down there while you're gone? 2 things we know, and 1 huge thing we still don't. The first is cleaning, and this one's amazing, because we only figured it out about 10 years ago. Your brain, it turns out, has a cleaning system that mostly runs while you sleep. During the day, all the busy work of your brain cells leaves behind waste, tiny bits of junk, including some gunk that, if it piles up over the years, is linked to the diseases that eat away at the mind in old age. And during deep sleep, something remarkable happens. Your brain cells shrink a little, opening up gaps between them, and the clear fluid your brain floats in starts washing through those gaps, flushing the day's waste away. Your brain is, quite literally, being rinsed clean every night, in the dark by a tide that can only flow once you've gone under. Part of why a bad night's sleep leaves you foggy, and why going a long time without sleep is so bad for you, is that the cleaning crew never got its shift. The second thing is memory. All night, while you're gone, the day you just lived is being sorted and filed. In the deep stage especially, that save button part of your brain replays the day and slowly passes it over into long-term storage, weaving what happened today into everything you already know. This is why sleeping after you learn something locks it in, and why pulling an all-nighter to cram is almost pointless. You can stuff the facts in, but without sleep your brain never files them properly, and most of it just washes out. Every night you're being sorted through. The day's flood of stuff splits into what you'll keep and what you'll let go, all by a version of you that has left the room. And now the huge thing we don't know, because I promise to be honest about the edges. We don't fully understand why sleep exists at all, and that's stranger than it sounds. Think about how risky sleep is. For hours every night, an animal goes blind, deaf, still, and helpless. Can't eat, can't run, can't protect itself. That should be a terrible idea. Any creature that could skip it should have done great. And yet nothing escapes it. Every animal we've looked at closely sleeps, or does something like it. Mammals, birds, reptiles, fish, all the way down to insects and tiny worms. Evolution had hundreds of millions of years and every reason to get rid of sleep, and it never did, which can only mean one thing. Whatever sleep does is so important that being knocked out and defenseless for a third of your life is a price worth paying for it. We can point at pieces, the cleaning, the memory work, the repair. But the full deep answer to why a brain has to go dark is still unknown. And if you doubt how non-optional it is, look at what happens when people try to skip it. Go long enough without sleep, and your brain starts forcing tiny micro sleeps on you. Split seconds where you black out with your eyes open, whether you like it or not. Push further, and people start seeing and hearing things that aren't there. Your brain will not simply let you stay awake forever. It would rather briefly switch you off, mid-sentence, standing up, than go without. You do this every night of your life, and nobody can fully tell you why you must. You just must. There's a deeper way to see why sleep might be non-negotiable, and it comes from physics, not biology. One of the most basic rules of the whole universe is this: left to itself, everything drifts from order toward disorder. Heat spreads out and evens off. Things wear down. Anything neat and organised only stays that way if something keeps paying to hold it together. And your brain is one of the most ordered, most high-maintenance things that exists anywhere. Around 86 billion cells, firing in tight, precise patterns all day long. Running something that ordered, that hard, builds up a cost, waste to clear out, wear to repair, tangled patterns that need resorting. You simply can't hold that much order together, day after day, without a reset. And a lot of scientists think that's a big part of what sleep actually is. The nightly maintenance shift that a hugely ordered physical system needs, just to keep from sliding into disorder. It might be the deepest reason nothing alive has ever been able to skip it. Order in this universe has to be paid for. You pay for yours in the dark every night. That's the machinery. Now the inside, or really, the strange lack of one. The thing is, you can't get at this by trying. You can't remember deep sleep. You can't imagine it, and you can't sneak up on it. It's like this. You can't understand what it's like to be blind by closing your eyes. Closing your eyes gives you darkness, and darkness is still something, still a thing you're seeing. Deep sleep isn't darkness. In deep sleep, there's no dark to see, because there's no one there to see it. There isn't even nothing, because nothing is still a thing you'd notice. There's just the total absence of all of it, including you, including the part of you that would notice you were missing. People who've thought about this for a long time called it a kind of temporary ending. But here's the strange mercy of it. An ending with no pain in it and no fear. You're completely gone, and it costs you nothing, because there's no you there to feel the loss. It's the closest thing to not existing that a living person ever passes through, and it's totally painless, precisely because pain needs someone to feel it. You've already been to the far edge of your own absence, thousands of times. You go there again tonight, and it has never once hurt you. The old traditions that mapped the inside of the mind didn't ignore this flaw either. In some very old writings from India, deep dreamless sleep isn't treated as just an off switch. It's treated as one of the real states of the self, with its own name, a place where the self rests, gathered back into itself, quiet and whole, like a seed. I'll be careful here, because we're only on the first step, and I already want to keep my promise. That's someone's reading of the experience, a meaning laid on top of it, not something a machine measured. What the machines confirm is the slow waves and the vanished self. What it means that you dissolve every night and come back. That's a beautiful guess, not a proven fact, and I'll treat it as exactly that. But here's a small, real mystery that even the scientists will hand you, right here at the bottom of the stairs. If you were completely gone in deep sleep, totally absent, with nothing left keeping watch, then how do you know when you wake up that you are gone? Every morning you come up out of that dark with a quiet, unspoken sense that time passed and you weren't there for it. You don't wake up confused, unable to account for the missing hours, the way you would if someone had simply deleted a chunk of your life. Somehow, faintly, something noticed the nothing. Something kept the thinnest thread going across the gap, so the you who fell asleep and the you who woke up recognize each other as the same person. If being aware had truly switched all the way off, not dimmed but ended, you'd wake up every day like a newborn, with no sense there had ever been a before. But you don't. There's a thin, strange thread that survives even the deepest dark. So maybe, even here, at the very bottom, awareness didn't switch off so much as step back, pulled behind the curtain, watching nothing, holding the place. I can't prove that, and I won't pretend I can. But it's the quiet question sitting under this first step, and it's a good one to fall toward. Not how does the light go out, but what is the faint something that remembers the dark? In that way, deep sleep is both an ending and a beginning. Every night you set down everything you carry, your name, your worries, your whole sense of being someone, and every morning you pick it back up. Each morning you're put back together, carried up out of the empty dark, up through the rising layers of the mind, until the world clicks back into place, and the story of you starts up again, as if it never paused. The dreamer gets rebuilt, the senses reopen, that smooth feeling of being here all the time without a break comes back, and hides the gap so well you never miss it. But for a few hours you are nowhere, and that maybe is the purest rest your mind will ever get, the deep, clean peace of being let off, for a little while, from the tiring job of being someone. Rest there a moment at the bottom, because just above this silent floor, something amazing starts to stir. Out of the pure dark, the first pictures begin to move. Little pieces start to drift. Out of that total emptiness, without your eyes opening, without your body moving, something starts to build itself. A shape, a face, a place you half remember. And then, all at once, you're somewhere else completely, walking down a street that doesn't exist, talking to someone who's been gone for years, moving through a whole world that has grown up around you out of nothing. This is the second level. This is dreaming, and it's the first world your mind builds entirely for itself. What's amazing about it is worth holding on to before we even get into how it works. In a dream, your senses are almost completely shut. Your eyes are closed and seeing nothing. The doors between you and the outside world have basically swung shut for the night. Almost nothing is getting in. And yet the experience is full. There's a whole world in there, with light in it, and space and weather, and other people with faces and voices, and a real feeling of a world stretching off in every direction. None of it is coming from outside. Every single bit of it is being made, in the dark, by your brain, You've shut out the world, and in its place, you've built another one, and you're walking around inside it, totally convinced it's real. We know pretty well when this happens. After you sink through deep sleep, your brain climbs back up into a more electric, restless state, one where those slow waves break up into something fast and busy, closer to being awake than to the deep dark below. Behind your closed eyelids, your eyes start flicking and darting around, as if they're watching something, which is why this stage is named after that. Rapid eye movement sleep. Your brain in this stage lights up almost as much as when you're awake, full of activity, feeling, and story. And here's the piece of engineering that keeps it safe. During this stage, a small area at the base of your brain sends out a signal that basically paralyzes your body. You're switched off from the neck down. Your mind runs wild through made-up worlds, while your body lies still and safe in the bed, unable to act any of it out. And we know exactly how important that paralysis is, because we know what happens when it goes wrong. In some people, the switch doesn't fully catch and they physically act out their dreams, kicking, running, shouting, even jumping out of bed, living out the action in their heads for real. And there's an even weirder glitch, one you might have had yourself, and it explains something people have been scared of for thousands of years. Sometimes the paralysis from dreaming hangs on for a few seconds after you've woken up. Your mind wakes into the room, aware, eyes open, but your body is still locked in dream paralysis. You're awake and you can't move. This is called sleep paralysis. And because the dreaming machinery is still half running, it often comes with vivid hallucinations. A figure standing in the corner, a weight pressing on your chest, a presence in the room that shouldn't be there. For most of human history, people had no way to explain this except with something supernatural. A demon, a ghost, a night visitor sitting on the sleeper's chest. And here's the striking part. Cultures all over the world, with no contact between them, invented almost the exact same figure to explain it. It was never a visitor. It was just the dreaming brain's paralysis, caught for a few seconds in the light of being awake, painting a monster into an empty room. And honestly, that explanation is eerier and more interesting than the ghost. That your own mind can put a terror in your bedroom while you lie there awake, just because two systems that were supposed to switch cleanly didn't hand off in time. Now, what the freed up dreaming mind does with its freedom is amazing, and it hides one of the biggest clues in this whole climb. It builds, mountains rise up and vanish, faces you've never seen blend perfectly with faces you love. You live what feels like a whole afternoon in the space of real minutes. And the strangest part, the part that should stop you cold, is that while you're in it, it feels real. As real, moment to moment, as being awake. You almost never notice from the inside that anything's off. The dream fools you completely every night, and you fall for it every night. And there's a physical reason it fools you so completely, one that cleanly undercuts the whole idea that real and dream are cleanly different things. Scientists can watch the dreaming brain, and here's what they find. During a vivid dream, huge parts of it light up almost exactly the way they do when you're awake and living the same thing for real. Dream of running, and the movement parts of your brain fire much as they would if you were actually running. Dream of a face, and the face recognition machinery switches on as if a real face were in front of you. From the brain's own point of view, there often isn't a sharp line between seeing a thing and dreaming it. It's running much of the same equipment either way, which lands you somewhere unsettling and kind of beautiful. Your brain has no special stamp that marks an experience as real. It builds waking life and dream life out of a lot of the same parts. The only reason waking usually wins is that it's the one getting corrected by the outside world moment to moment. Take that correction away in a dream, in the dark, and the machinery runs free, and it feels every bit as real, because to your brain in that moment it is. And here's the plain, dizzying fact underneath all of it. This part isn't mystical at all. It's just an honest look at what a dream is. When you dream, you are at the same time two things that should be impossible to be at once. You are the author of the world and a character inside it. Every wall of that impossible room you built, every word out of every stranger's mouth, your own mind spoke, every face in the crowd, your memory carved, the whole place and everyone in it is you. And yet you wander through it like a foreign country, surprised at every turn, scared of dangers you invented yourself, moved by people who are nothing but folds of your own mind. You made the whole thing, forgot you made it, and got lost inside it. Hold on to that, because we'll need it when the stairs get steep. The dreaming brain proves, beyond any doubt, that your mind can build a complete, convincing, three-dimensional world from the inside. A world with the full feel of reality that fools you completely, using nothing from outside at all. It does this every single night. You have a world builder living in your head, and it runs its workshop while you sleep. Now here's something odd about dreams that you already know from your own life, even if you've never thought about why. You forget almost all of them. You can have a wild, detailed, hour-long dream, full of feeling, and within a few minutes of waking, it's basically gone. A couple of fading scraps, and then nothing. That's not you being bad at remembering. It's that same save button again. During dreaming, the part of your brain that files memories is running very low. So the dream happens, fully and vividly, but almost none of it gets saved. Which means this: you dream several times every single night, 4, 5, 6 times, living through whole worlds each time, and you throw nearly all of them away before breakfast. You are, most nights, the author of stories you will never read, not even once, and you're not the only one who does this. Watch a sleeping dog, the paws twitching, the muffled little half-barks, the eyes flicking under closed lids. And you are watching a dream in progress. Nearly every mammal we've looked at does it, sinking down into sleep and rising back up into that active dreaming state night after night. Rats, asleep, have been caught replaying the exact path they ran through a maze that day, their brains retracing the route, corner for corner, while their bodies lie still. Even some birds seem to do it, which means dreaming is not some strange human quirk, a side effect of being clever with language. It is old, far older than we are, running in creatures that have been building their own private, wordless worlds every night for tens of millions of years, long before there was anyone around to wonder what a dream was for. So tonight, when you sink under and the worlds begin to assemble themselves out of nothing, you are doing one of the oldest things a mind knows how to do, something nearly every warm, sleeping body on the planet is doing right along with you, in the same dark at the same hour. There's also a rarer state worth knowing about, because it's the one place where being the author and being the character briefly come together. And because for a long time, serious scientists doubted it was even real. Every so often, inside a dream, a person suddenly realizes they're dreaming. The dream keeps going, fully vivid, but now there's an aware part inside it that knows the whole world is self-made. It's called lucid dreaming, and for years it was written off as impossible or made up. How could you be asleep and aware at the same time? And how could anyone ever prove it from inside a dream? Then researchers found a clever way through. They knew that during dreaming your body's paralyzed, except for the eyes which keep moving. So they trained lucid dreamers before sleep to make a specific pattern of eye movements the moment they realized they were dreaming. Say, look left, right, as a signal they'd agreed on in advance. Then they watched them sleep, and there in the middle of confirmed dreaming, on the recording, came the exact signal they'd agreed on. A message sent on purpose from inside a dream by someone fast asleep. It was, in a real way, the first message ever received from inside the dreaming mind. Proof that awareness can be awake even while the body sleeps and the dream runs on. So what are dreams for? Here I have to be honest again. We don't fully know, and there are a few serious guesses, none of them settled. Some scientists think dreaming is a kind of overnight practice for scary situations, a safe simulator where your brain runs frightening scenarios so you're more ready for the real thing. Some think it's your feelings getting sorted, a nightly working through of the day's emotions, softening the hard stuff, a kind of therapy that runs while you sleep. Some think it's your memories getting sorted, your brain mixing new experiences together in unlikely combinations to see what connects. And some think dreams are, at least partly, your mind trying to build a story out of basically random signals firing off while you sleep, meaning stitched onto noise. It might be several of these at once, but I won't tell you it's solved, because it isn't. Every night your mind builds these vivid, urgent, forgettable worlds, and we still argue about why. It also explains why nightmares hit as hard as they do. In dreaming sleep, the emotional parts of your brain, the alarm centers, the fear machinery, run hot, as active as in waking life or more. But the part of your brain that normally keeps them in check, the calm, reasoning, planning region behind your forehead, runs quiet. So in a nightmare, fear gets the wheel with almost nothing steering it. No cool voice to say, this isn't real. This can't actually happen. Calm down. That governor is offline. It's the same reason dreams can be wildly strange, and you never think to question them. The part of you that would say, wait, that makes no sense, has clocked out for the night. A nightmare is your threat simulator running at full blast with the brakes disconnected, which is terrifying in the moment, completely harmless, and gone the instant that calm front part of your brain switches back on and you open your eyes. And once you take in what the dreaming brain can do, a quieter, stranger thought tends to follow it in. And it's the door we're about to walk through. If your mind can build a world this complete and convincing out of nothing, a world you'd swear was real right up until you woke up, then what exactly guarantees that your waking world is a different kind of thing? What if being awake isn't the opposite of dreaming, but just a steadier, more disciplined version of the same trick? Your brain building a world and handing it to you as real, except this time with the outside world feeding in corrections to keep the story straight. I'm not going to tell you your life is a dream. I don't believe that, and it's not where the honest evidence points. But let the question sit for a second, because the science of what being awake is takes it more seriously than you'd expect. For now, the dream is thinning. That self-made world is losing its grip. Real light, this time from outside, is pressing at the edges. You're rising up through the last of the pictures toward the level you think of as simply, obviously, real. You're about to wake up. And being awake, it turns out, is not the plain, simple thing you've always taken it for. You open your eyes, the world is just there, solid, instant, obvious, the light in the room, the weight of your body, the ceiling, the sounds outside, the ordinary stuff of being alive. This is it, the real one, the level you spend almost your whole life inside, the one you'd point at if someone asked what reality is. Being awake, the full, bright, everything at once flood of experience, all stitched together into the single smooth feeling of here I am, in the world, right now. This is where nearly everyone stops. This is the top of the stairs as far as most people ever know. We go around and around, awake, dreaming deep sleep, and take that loop to be the whole of what a mind is. But the longer you look straight at being awake, the less solid it gets. And here, before we climb any higher, I want to stand on ground that's completely firm, because this next bit isn't mystical, and it isn't a guess. This is measured, tested, mainstream science, and it's more unsettling than anything a mystic ever came up with. The smooth, solid, obvious world you're experiencing right now is not being shown to you. It's being built for you, in real time, inside your head, and you have never once experienced the world directly. Start with seeing, because it's the easiest to catch in the act. It feels like your eyes are windows, like you look out through them, and the world just comes in, whole and coloured and already arranged. That is not what happens, not even close. What reaches your eye is a storm of light bouncing off things, landing on the back of your eye as a small, flat, upside-down smudge, which then gets turned into nothing but tiny pulses of electricity racing down a nerve. That's all your brain ever gets from your eyes. Not a picture, but a stream of electrical ticks in the dark. Your brain has never seen light. It sits in total blackness inside the bone of your skull, and it has never once been touched by light. And out of that stream of ticks it builds, flips the image right way up, fills in the gaps, guesses the distances, and hands you a finished, full, three-dimensional, full-colour world so smoothly and so instantly that you'd swear you were looking straight at reality. Let me prove the building to you with something happening in your own eyes right now. There is a hole in your vision. In each eye, at the spot where the nerve leaves the back, there are no light-sensing cells at all. A literal blind spot, a patch of nothing in each eye's view. You never notice it, because your brain paints over it, filling the hole with a best guess of whatever's around it. You can catch it, cover one eye, hold a finger up off to the side, and at just the right spot, the tip of your own finger will silently vanish, swallowed by the blind spot, and your brain will calmly fill the gap with background, so you don't see a hole, you just see more wall. Your brain is inventing part of what you're looking at right now, and stitching the invention in so smoothly you'd never know. That's not a camera trick, that's your everyday vision, caught in the act. And there's an even odder one. You feel like your view of the world is smooth and steady, like a video. It's not, hey. Your eyes jump around, several times every second, flicking from spot to spot in fast little jerks. And here's the wild part. During each of those jumps, your vision basically goes blurry blind, because the world is smearing across your eye too fast to see. So by rights, your view of the world should be a constant mess of blur, several times a second, all day. But you never see the blur, not once. Your brain simply cuts it out. It edits out the blurry jumps and stitches the clear snapshots together into what feels like one smooth, steady stream. You are, in a real sense, going blind for a fraction of a second, over and over, all day long, and your brain hides every single blackout from you so perfectly you've lived your whole life without noticing. And there's another one that shows how little of the world you're taking in. It feels like you're seeing the whole rich scene in front of you, all at once in full detail. You're not. Your brain grabs a little, pays attention to a little, and just assumes the rest is stable. So much so that fairly big changes in a scene, if they happen while your attention flicks away, go completely unnoticed. In experiments, people have failed to notice the person they were talking to being swapped for a different person during a brief interruption. Your sense of a complete, detailed, unbroken view of the world is itself part of the build. You're not filming the room. You're holding a rough sketch and trusting it. And it's not just sight. Every sense is a narrow-filtered, rebuilt slice, shaped by evolution, not to show you the truth, but to keep your ancestors alive. Colour is the cleanest example. Out in the world, there is no colour. There's only light of different lengths, and those lengths have no colour in them. Red is not a fact about the light. It's an experience your brain makes and paints onto certain lengths of light. The redness of red happens nowhere in the whole universe except inside a mind. Even time gets built rather than received. Your brain smooths the incoming rush of moments into one flowing now, editing out the gaps, which is why you don't go briefly blind every time you blink, and why a good magician can slide a card right through the crack in your attention while you stare straight at his hands. The best way scientists have to describe all this is memorable. Your brain is basically a guessing machine. It isn't a camera sitting there recording whatever's out there. It's constantly making its best guess about what the world should look like, based on everything it's ever learned, and then using the little trickle of signal from your senses just to check and fix that guess. What you experience is not the raw feed, it's your brain's guess, corrected by reality. Being awake is a kind of dream that the world keeps interrupting to say, no, not quite, fix it. And if you ever doubt that your brain is building the world instead of just receiving it, look at what happens when you take the world away. Put a person in total darkness and total silence, a soundproofed room, or a float tank so warm and still they can't even feel their own body, and the mind does not go blank. Starved of anything real to work with, it starts inventing. Within minutes to hours, people in deep sensory deprivation begin to see things. Drifting lights, patterns, then whole scenes. They hear sounds, music, voices. Some feel strongly that there is someone else in the room with them. The world-building machinery never switches off. It runs on whatever it can get, and when reality stops feeding it, it quietly starts feeding itself, which tells you something about every ordinary waking moment. The vivid world in front of you was never poured into a passive mind sitting there receiving it. It is generated always by a mind that never stops generating, and normally the real world's only job is to keep that generating honest, to keep correcting the guess. Take the corrections away, and the guessing just keeps going, straight off the edge of anything real, and you can catch your senses building and even overruling each other with a couple of things you might have run into. In one, you watch a video of someone's mouth making one sound, while a different sound plays, take it, and what you hear changes depending on what you see their lips doing. Same sound going into your ears, but your eyes overrule them, and you honestly hear a different syllable. Your brain melts sight and sound into one built experience, and when they disagree, it picks a winner without telling you. In another, there was an audio clip that went around the world because people split hard over whether it said one word or a totally different one. The exact same sound, making two different, confident experiences in two different people. And there was that photo of a dress that half the world saw as one pair of colours and half saw as another from the identical picture. None of these are trick illusions. They're the seams of the build showing through, proof that what you experience isn't what's out there. It's what your brain makes out of what's out there. And different brains, from the same input, make different worlds. There's an even sneakier layer to this, and once you notice it, you can't unnotice it. A lot of the time, you don't see what's there, you see what you expect. Because your brain is always guessing ahead, it leans on its prediction, and it will bend the incoming signal to match. It's why, the moment someone tells you what a mumbled song lyric or a garbled recording says, you suddenly can't hear it any other way. The words lock in and won't come loose. It's why you'll swear you heard your own name across a noisy room when no one said it. It's why you read straight past the same typo in your own writing a dozen times. You see the sentence you meant, not the one sitting on the page. Your expectations aren't just resting on top of what you perceive. They reach down and shape it before it ever reaches you, which means two people with different expectations, looking at the very same thing, can honestly and truly see two different things. And each will be certain they simply saw what was there. You're not a clean window onto the world. You're a guess about the world, wearing the confidence of a fact. And it's not only the world out there that your brain builds, it also builds where you are. Stop for a second and notice where you seem to sit right now. For most people, it's a point somewhere behind the eyes, a little cockpit up front, where the real you looks out from. But there is no cockpit. There is no spot in your brain where you are standing and watching. That felt location, the sense of riding along just behind your own face, is itself something the brain builds, stitched together out of your eyes and your sense of your own body. And because it's built, it can be moved. In the lab, with nothing more than a camera feed and a few carefully timed touches, researchers can give a person a clear, convincing feeling of floating a few feet behind their own body or of sitting inside a mannequin across the room. The person knows full well it's a trick and feels it anyway because the machinery that decides you are here has simply been handed different information. So even the most basic fact of your whole experience, that you are in here looking out, is not a solid fact about the world. It's a place your brain is putting you, again and again, moment by moment. And on a night like this one, as the body goes still and the edges of everything begin to soften, that placement is exactly the thing that starts gently to loosen and let go. There's a deeper one here, and it's real, careful science, not word games. The very words your language gives you shape what you can even see. There are peoples whose languages cut up colour differently than yours, with several separate words for shades of green you'd lump together as one, and no single basic word for blue as its own thing. Show them a ring of green squares with one blue square hidden in it, and they can struggle to pick out the blue that would jump right out at you. Show them greens that look identical to your eye, and they spot the odd one instantly, because their language trained that difference into their seeing. And when scholars look at the oldest writing we have, something odd shows up. In some very old poetry, the sea and the sky get described with colour words we'd never use. The wine-dark sea, and blue, as its own named colour, seems to show up surprisingly late across many cultures, probably because there's so little blue in nature to need a word for. People argue about exactly what it means, but the careful version holds. The words you have for the world shape which differences in it you even notice. You're not seeing raw reality, even in the way you sort it into groups. You're seeing it through a grid your language handed you, and your slice is thin to begin with. Your senses catch only a razor-thin band of what's out there, sound too high and too low for your ears, light beyond both ends of what your eyes can catch. Other animals live in completely different slices of the same world. Animals that see the warmth of bodies as a glow, that find their way by the pull of the planet, the way you follow a street, that hear textures of the dark you have no way to pick up. They stand in the same reality you do, and experience something so different it might as well be another world. So which of all those versions is the real one? None of them. Everyone is just an interface, a custom screen. The real thing, whatever the world is by itself, before any mind builds a version of it, none of us has ever truly touched. We're each sealed inside our own rebuild, comparing notes through a keyhole. And here's the small everyday miracle that makes all this livable, that stops it from being scary. We mostly agree. When you and I look at the sky, we both say blue. When you set your keys down, they're still there when you reach back. The world has a stubborn steadiness, a way of pushing back and staying put that dreams never quite have. And importantly, other people seem to be building the same world you are and checking it with you, moment to moment. We call the result the real world, the shared world. And it's real enough. Real in every way that matters for life. But look at what it's resting on. Not on direct contact with reality, but on billions of separate brains, each building its own private version, all checking their versions against each other until the overlap feels solid as stone. Being awake is a shared build, held steady by everyone agreeing and by a world that keeps pushing back. It is not the opposite of the dream. It's the steadiest, most disciplined, most shared dream there is. Vivid enough and consistent enough and backed up by enough other dreamers that it convinces everyone at once that it's simply, obviously, real. Before we leave the solid ground of the measurable, stop for a moment and look at the physical thing that's been doing all of this. Because it's easy, in all this talk of levels and awareness, to forget that the whole show is being run by an object. A wet, grey, 3-pound lump you could hold in 2 cupped hands. And as objects go, it is the single, strangest one we have ever found anywhere in the universe. Packed inside your skull are somewhere around 86 billion nerve cells, and they are wired together by something like 100 trillion connections, more links inside your one head than there are stars in the entire Milky Way galaxy. It is, as far as we know, the most complicated object in existence. And here's the part that should stop you cold. This whole galaxy in a skull runs on about 20 watts of power. Less than the light bulb in your fridge. Every thought you've ever had, every face you've loved, every fear and every daydream, the entire inner universe of you, runs on less electricity than one dim little bulb. And the atoms doing it carry a history far older than the Earth. The specific atoms firing as your thoughts right now, the carbon, the oxygen, the iron riding in your blood, were not made here. They were forged deep inside stars that lived and died before the sun was even born, thrown out across space when those stars collapsed, and gathered up billions of years later into the particular pattern that is you. So this is what's actually sitting here in the dark, following these words. The most complex object in the known universe, running on a trickle of power, assembled from atoms cooked inside long-dead stars, quietly producing the feeling of being someone. And we still cannot say how or why any of it is felt from the inside at all. That's the third level. Being awake, the full, bright, shared build you've mistaken your whole life for the raw world itself. And for almost everyone, this is the ceiling. Awake, dreaming, the deep dark, around and around, taken to be the entire shape of a mind. But stay here one more moment, right at the top of the ordinary, and notice something. In all 3 of these levels, awake, dreaming, deep in the dark, the stuff inside changed completely. A bright, crowded, built world, an invented one, a total blank. 3 completely different states, and yet something was quietly the same through all of them. Something was there to have the built waking world, there to wander the dream, there, thin as a thread, even to notice the nothing of the deep. The pictures change. The awareness holding the pictures does not. And almost nobody, in a whole life, ever turns around to look at that, at the steady, quiet light that all 3 states show up inside of. The mind is restless. It spends its whole life facing outward, at the world, the dream, the next thing and the next, and it hardly ever holds still long enough to notice the one thing that never changes, the plain fact of awareness itself, the bare sense of being here to experience any of it at all. We've been climbing through the stuff inside of being conscious. Now the stairs turn. because when the mind finally goes quiet and your attention, for once, turns back on the awareness that was doing the experiencing the whole time, a fourth level starts to open. And this is where the map we can measure runs out, and the country only the mystics have walked begins. I'll tell you exactly when we cross that line. We're standing right at it now. Okay, from here on, something changes, and I want to be straight with you about it before we take another step. Everything we've talked about so far, deep sleep, dreaming, waking up, is stuff scientists can measure. Real machines, real tests, things you could look up tomorrow and check for yourself. We were standing on solid ground the whole way. The next steps are different. People have gone to these places, lots of people, across thousands of years, but the machines can barely follow them. So I'm going to keep one simple rule for the rest of the climb, and I'll stick to it every single time. When something is proven, I'll say, this is proven. When something is just what people report, what they say it feels like, I'll say, this is what people say. And when it's a guess about what it all means, I'll call it a guess, because nobody knows the meaning for sure. Not me, not anyone. That's the honest truth, and I think it's more interesting than pretending to have answers I don't have. So, with that rule in your pocket, let's keep climbing. There's something you might not have noticed about every level so far. At every step, your awareness was pointed at something. Awake, it was pointed at the world. Dreaming, it was pointed at the dream. Even in the deep dark, it was defined by the nothing it was missing. Your awareness was always aware of something. It never just sat there, on its own. The fourth level is what happens when it does. You might have felt the edge of this without knowing what it was. Sometimes maybe sitting quietly, maybe just staring at nothing. The constant talking in your head goes quiet for a moment. You know that voice. It's the one that never shuts up. Planning, remembering, judging, narrating your whole day. And every now and then it stops. And in that little gap, you're still awake, clearly awake, but there's no thought in there. Just awareness itself, switched on, with almost nothing inside it. People who meditate a lot say you can learn to stay in that gap on purpose. Awake, alert, but empty. Not asleep, not thinking, just aware. The old traditions had a plain name for it. They called it the fourth, the state that isn't waking, dreaming, or deep sleep, but something else. The one that isn't about what's in it. It's just the bare fact of being awake, with the furniture cleared out of the room, and you don't have to be a monk to have brushed up against a cousin of this. Think of a time you were so completely absorbed in something, a game, a piece of music, a sport, drawing, even a really good conversation, that you looked up and an hour had just vanished. While it was happening, the constant you, the self-conscious voice worrying about how you look, what's next, what people think, went quiet. It didn't even feel like you doing the thing. It felt like the thing was just happening, cleanly, with nobody standing back and narrating it. People call that being in flow, and it's one of the best feelings there is. And here's the interesting part. A lot of what makes it feel so good is exactly that the self-voice went silent for a while. The nagging narrator switched off, and you got a break from the exhausting job of constantly being me. That's a small everyday taste of what the fourth level is. The mind wide awake and alive, but the self-chatter gone quiet. You've already been there. You just reached it by accident, through something you loved. Now, is there anything real underneath this, or is it just people talking? There's something real, and this is where I get to keep the first half of my promise. When people who've meditated for years drop into a deep state, brain scans show a clear, repeatable change. There's a part of your brain that's busy almost all the time. It runs when you're not focused on anything. When your mind wanders, When you think about yourself, replay the past, or worry about the future, basically, it's the machine that runs your inner voice and your sense of me. And in deep meditation, that machine gets quieter, measurably. The me chatter turns its volume down. That's proven. Hold on to it, because it's a big deal. It means the sense of being a self, with a running voice in your head, is not the bottom layer of your mind. It's something your brain does. It's an activity. And when that activity slows down, the self-feeling can fade while the awareness stays right there. So what the meditators then say about it, that they've touched some pure, deep, true awareness underneath everything, that's the guess. And I'm setting it down gently and not calling it fact. But here's the part that's honestly a little mind-bending even without the guessing. The you that feels so solid, so permanent, so obviously the center of everything, might be something your brain is making, not the thing your brain is made of. A thing it does, not the ground it stands on. And that lands us right here on the fourth step, on the single hardest question in all of science. I want to give it to you properly, in plain words, because it's the real heart of this whole climb. And it's not woo, it's the most honest, most stubborn puzzle we've got. Strip away the thoughts, strip away the inner voice. You're left with plain awareness. So ask the simplest question there is, why is there any awareness at all? And I don't mean, why does the brain handle information? That part isn't the mystery. We understand a lot about how a brain takes in signals, sorts them, and spits out behaviour. There's nothing spooky about a lump of cells doing that. In fact, here's the strange bit. A machine could do all of it in the dark, with nobody home. Think about your phone. It takes in information. It does a huge amount of processing, but there's nobody inside your phone feeling anything. It's dark in there. No one's home. So here's the question. Why isn't it dark in you? Why does being you come with an inside? Why does light hitting your eye turn into the actual feeling of seeing? Why does a wave in the air turn into the feeling of your favourite song? Why does losing someone turn into the ache of missing them? All of that could, in theory, just happen. Signals in, behaviour out, no feeling anywhere. A creature could act exactly like you. Say everything you say, flinch when it stubs its toe, and have nothing going on inside. Lights off. Nobody home. But your lights are on. There's someone home. There's something it's like to be you right now. Why? Scientists and philosophers have a name for this, and the name is honest about how stuck we are. They call it the hard problem. Not because it's complicated. Lots of brain questions are complicated, and we're slowly cracking them. This one is different. It's the question of why all that brain activity comes with a feeling on the inside at all, instead of just happening in the dark. And here's the humbling thing you should know. Nobody has solved it. Not the scientists, not the philosophers, nobody. We can match up feelings with brain activity incredibly well. We can say, this pattern goes with that feeling. But matching isn't explaining. We still can't say why the pattern is felt from the inside, instead of just running in the dark like the phone. It might be the single biggest hole in everything we know. We've mapped tiny particles and giant galaxies, and we can't explain the one thing you're most sure of, that it feels like something to be here. And before we go looking for exotic answers, here's a plain fact that makes the mystery sharper, not softer. Almost everything your brain does, it does with nobody watching. Right now, it is running your heartbeat, your breathing, your balance, the exact tension in dozens of muscles holding you upright. And you are aware of none of it. It just sorted out the grammar of this sentence and handed you the meaning, and you never saw the work. Your senses pour something like 11 million pieces of information into your brain every second, and the number you're actually aware of at any moment is closer to a few dozen. All the rest is handled in total darkness. You're conscious of only the thinnest sliver of what your own brain is doing, and there's a haunting proof of it. Some people, after damage to the seeing part of the brain, go blind. They honestly report seeing nothing at all, but sit them in front of an object and ask them to simply guess where it is or to reach for it, and they get it right over and over, far better than chance. Their brain is clearly still handling the sight. The information is getting in and being used, but none of it reaches their awareness. The machinery is doing the whole job of seeing, with nobody home to watch. It's called blindsight, and it's the entire mystery captured in one person. A brain doing the work of vision perfectly, with no experience attached to it. So here is the question, sharpened to a point. Your brain proves every single second that it can handle the world beautifully in the dark, with no one home. So why is any of it lit at all? Why does that one thin sliver, the sights, the sounds, the feeling of being you, come with someone inside to feel it, when all the rest runs perfectly well without? That's the hard problem, standing right in the middle of your own head. Now there's an answer to this mystery you've almost certainly run into, because it's everywhere, and it sounds like it should be the key. The answer is quantum physics, the idea that your consciousness comes from strange quantum effects deep inside your brain cells, that your mind is somehow a quantum machine, wired straight into the universe. It's a beautiful idea. A lot of very popular videos are built on it. So let me give you the honest version because I think it's more interesting than the hype. Here's the part that's completely true and wonderful. You are quantum, all the way down. Every atom in your brain, every chemical that carries a thought, every signal that fires, all of it runs, at the deepest level, on the rules of quantum physics. In fact, the only reason your atoms hold together well enough to build a brain out of at all, the reason the tiny electrons inside them don't just fall into the center and vanish, is a purely quantum rule. So without quantum physics, there are no stable atoms, no chemistry, no neurons, no you. Your consciousness is built on a quantum foundation, right down to the ground. That part is solid. But here's where the honest version splits away from the internet's version. Being built on quantum physics is not the same as thinking with quantum magic. The famous quantum tricks, a single particle somehow being in two places at once, two particles staying linked across a room, are unbelievably fragile. They only survive in tiny, freezing cold, perfectly sealed off setups. And your brain is the exact opposite of that. Warm, wet, and crowded with molecules bumping into each other billions of times a second. In a place like that, those delicate quantum states don't gently fade. They get smashed apart almost instantly, in a fraction of a second, long before they could ever build up into anything as big and slow as a thought. Physicists even have a name for that smashing apart: decoherence. And it's the main reason most physicists think that the brain, at the level where thinking actually happens, runs on ordinary everyday rules, not quantum ones. So here's the honest bridge, and I think it's better than the shortcut. Quantum physics is real, and it is the foundation that every single thing you are is built on. But it is not the secret engine of your awareness, and it does not solve the hard problem. It just moves the mystery down one floor. You don't get to hide the strangeness of being conscious inside a quantum trick and call it explained. The strangeness stays exactly where it was, in the plain, still unexplained fact that all of this, the quantum foundation, the atoms, the warm, ordinary brain quietly doing its work, somehow comes with someone home to feel it. Let me shrink it down to something you can hold. I can measure the exact light that makes the colour red. I can find the exact cells in your eye and your brain that fire when you look at it. I can describe every step, and none of it, not one bit of it, tells me what red actually looks like to you, on the inside. There's no machine I could build that would let me feel your red. It's locked in there, in you, and I can never get to it. I can know every fact about your seeing red, and still never know what it's like. Another way in. Some animals sense the world in ways we can't even picture. A bat, for example, sees using sound. It makes little squeaks and listens to the echoes bouncing back, and builds a whole world out of that. Now, we could study a bat's brain completely, down to the last cell, and we would still never know what it feels like to be that bat, sensing a dark room by echoes. You could know every single fact about the bat and still have no idea what it's like from the inside. That gap between all the facts and the actual feeling, that gap is the whole mystery. And it's not just bats. It's you, it's the redness of red. It's the entire inside of your life. One more way to feel how big that gap is, and it's a little story people have argued about for years. Imagine a scientist, let's call her Mary, who has spent her whole life inside a black and white room. Black walls, white floor, a black and white screen, and nothing else. She has never once in her entire life seen a single colour. But through that screen she has learned every fact there is to know about colour, every wavelength of light, every cell in the human eye, every signal a brain sends when someone looks at something red. She is the greatest expert on colour who has ever lived. She knows all of it, completely, on paper. Then one day, the door opens. She walks outside, and she sees a red rose, real red, for the first time in her life. Here's the question. Does she learn something new in that moment? It really feels like she does, doesn't it? It feels like she finally finds out what red is actually like. But wait, she already knew every single fact about it. There was nothing left to learn on paper. So if she still gains something new the instant she sees it, and it does seem like she does, then the feeling of red was never in the facts at all. It's something extra, something sitting on top of everything science can ever write down. And that little something extra is exactly the part we can't explain, can't measure, and can't hand to anybody else. The whole mystery waiting for her in a flower. This is also, secretly, the biggest question in technology right now. People are building machines that talk like us, that seem to understand, that can hold a conversation better than some people can. And sooner or later, someone asks the obvious thing, is anyone actually in there? Is the machine feeling anything? Or is it just an incredibly good version of the phone, doing all the processing in the dark, with nobody home? And here's the honest, slightly dizzying answer. We don't have a test for it. We can't even fully explain why we're conscious. So we have no clean way to check whether a machine is. It might act exactly as if someone's inside and be completely empty. It might one day actually have someone inside, and we'd have no sure way to know. We're trying to spot a light we can't even define. And once you sit with that, it turns around and points straight back at the people around you. You know, for absolute certain that your own lights are on. You're living it right now. You don't need proof, but you can't check anyone else. Not really. I can't climb inside your head to make sure someone's home in there. You can't climb inside mine. Everyone around you acts conscious. They laugh, they wince, they say, ouch, when they stub a toe. But the acting is all you ever get to see. The feeling on the inside of another person is the one thing in the entire universe you can never reach. We're each sealed inside our own little light, taking it completely on faith that everyone else is lit up too. Almost always, that faith is right. But it is, when you really look at it, the strangest and most trusting thing we do. And you hand that trust out, without a second thought, to every single person you pass. And medicine performs an even more complete version of this vanishing, on purpose, every single day, in every hospital on earth. General anesthesia. It is not sleep, It's deeper and stranger than sleep. A drug goes in, and within seconds the you is simply gone. Not dreaming, not resting, switched fully off, in a way even the deepest sleep doesn't quite reach. No time passing, no sense of a gap, no dark to wait in, nothing at all. Surgeons can then do things to your open body that would be beyond unbearable, and you're not there to feel a moment of it. And then the drug clears, and you come back, the same you, your memories intact, your story picking up as if it had never stopped. Here's the humbling part, and it belongs right in the middle of this mystery. We do this to millions of people a year, safely and reliably, and we still do not fully understand how it works. We can switch a person's consciousness off with a chemical and switch it back on, like a light on a wall, and we cannot yet say exactly what it is we're switching. The deepest question in all of science, flipped on and off before breakfast, in every operating room in the world, by people who don't fully know what the switch is wired to. Now, I don't want to leave you thinking scientists have simply thrown up their hands. They haven't. There are serious, careful theories about which brain activity turns into conscious experience, and it's worth knowing their shape. One big idea says consciousness is what happens when a piece of information gets broadcast widely across the brain, when it stops being handled off in one corner and suddenly gets shared everywhere at once, like a piece of news breaking across a whole country in a single moment. On this view, the thoughts you're aware of are simply the ones that went public inside your head. Another big idea says it's not about broadcasting, but about weaving, that an experience is conscious when a huge amount of information is bound together so tightly it can't be pulled back apart. And the more woven together it is, the more conscious. Careful people are still arguing about which, if either, is right. But here's the thing to notice, and it's the honest heart of all of it. Every one of these theories, even the best, is trying to answer when. When does brain activity become conscious? What's the trigger? What's the pattern? Not one of them answers why. Why any pattern of activity, however widely shared or tightly woven, should be felt from the inside instead of just happening in the dark. They are mapping the doorway, they are not explaining the light, and that gap between knowing exactly when it happens and having no idea why it feels like anything is the hard problem, still standing right at the edge of everything we know. So that's the fourth level, awareness with the thoughts cleared away. It's real as a brain state, it's unproven as a meaning, and it sits right on top of the hardest question anyone has ever asked. You've been carrying that question around, effortlessly, your whole life. You are the mystery. You just can't see it because you're looking out of it. Rest on that a moment, because the people who go up these stairs say the stillness doesn't have to stop here. They say it can start to follow you out into your daily life. If you've come this far with me, all the way down into the dark and back up to the edge of what anyone can explain, then this is the kind of quiet, honest walk I make here, and I put out new ones regularly. Hitting subscribe is the one small thing that keeps the next one coming to you. For most people who ever reach the fourth level, it's a visit. You sit, your mind goes quiet, awareness opens up, and then you get up. The inner voice switches back on, and normal life takes over again. It was a room you stepped into and left. The fifth level is when that quiet stops being a room you visit and becomes something you carry with you all day. People who've practiced for a long time describe it like this: the still open awareness doesn't collapse the second they open their eyes and start doing things. It stays underneath everything. You think, you talk, you work, you feel the whole range of a normal life. And under all of it, steady and calm, there's a kind of watching that doesn't get swept away. Happiness comes and it watches. Sadness comes and it watches. You're fully in your life and at the same time quietly aware of it from a slight, calm distance. Not just the character in the story anymore, also the one the story is happening to. Is any of that real? There's some real brain science about being able to watch your own mind while you're living it. And long-time meditators do show steady, unusual patterns, the kind you'd expect from someone holding two things at once, living and watching themselves live. So the ability seems real, and it can be trained. But the claim that this watcher is your true, forever deathless self, that's a guess, and I'm setting it down again. Real practice, real brain changes, real steadiness. What the watcher ultimately is, unknown. But I want to spend most of this level on the honest version of the watcher idea. Because it's not soft and it connects straight to that unsettling thing we found one step down, that the self is something your brain does, not something it rests on. Because if you follow that carefully, plain science ends up somewhere almost as odd as the meditators, by a completely different road. Now, a question that sounds simple and really isn't. Are you the same person as the little kid in your baby photos? Picture one of those photos. A little kid, a few years old. That kid believed things you don't believe anymore. Wanted things you don't want. Couldn't tie their own shoes. And here's the wild part. Not one single piece of that kid's body is still in yours. You've swapped it all out, every cell replaced many times over. Their memories, almost all gone. You probably know your own early childhood mostly from stories your family told you. Second-hand stories about a little stranger who happens to have your name. When you look closely, there is almost nothing. Not the body, not the memories, not the beliefs. That has stayed the same and carried through from that kid to you. And yet, this is the part that won't let go. It feels deep in your bones, like that kid is you. Like one single thread runs from them, through every version of you since, all the way to you lying here right now. So what is that thread? Where does it live? It's not in the body, that's all been replaced. It's not in the memories, those are mostly gone. So the feeling that you're one continuous person, the same you over all these years, what is it made of? The answer a lot of scientists have landed on, and it's a surprising one. It's made of story. Your brain builds lots of models, a model of your body, a model of the world, and it also builds a model of itself, a running character called me, with a past and a future and a name, stitched together out of memory into one smooth, continuous feeling. And your brain is really good at this. So good that the story never shows its seams. So good that the made-up character doesn't feel made up at all. It feels like the realest thing there is. Some scientists say it about as bluntly as it can be said. There is no little person sitting inside your head running the show. No single solid you behind your eyes. There's a process that creates the feeling of a you, a story your brain tells so smoothly and so constantly that you mistake the story for a storyteller. And if that sounds like too much, like surely there's a real solid you in charge, let me show you how good your brain is at making up its own story. There's an experiment with people whose two brain halves got separated, so the halves couldn't talk to each other. Scientists could sneak an instruction to just one half, like secretly tell the left half, get up and walk. The person would get up and walk. Then the scientist would ask the other half, the talking half, which never got the message, hey, why did you just get up? And here's the thing, the person never said, I don't know. Instantly, confidently, they'd make up a reason. Oh, I was going to get a drink. And they believed it. They weren't lying. Their brain made up a reason and felt sure it was true. Sit with that because it's a little unnerving. Your brain does this all the time. It tells a smooth, confident story about who you are and why you do things, even when it has no idea why. It fills in a reason and believes it. The you that explains your own life is a lot of the time making it up right after the fact and never noticing. So if the story of why you act is invented on the spot, how much of the rest of you is your brain making up too? More than you'd think. It reaches into your body, into your memories, even into the line where you stop and the world begins. And physics has a quietly beautiful way of describing what that leaves you as. If you're not the atoms, because they wash through and get swapped out, then what is it that stays? A pattern, an arrangement, a shape the material keeps flowing through, the way a traffic jam can hold its shape, and even drift slowly backward along a motorway, while the actual cars caught in it are changing every second. You are not a thing, you are a process, and here's the physical catch that makes it real, rather than just poetic. Holding a pattern that complicated together in a universe that is always pulling everything toward disorder takes constant work, a constant flow of energy passing through you. That's what eating is. That's part of what sleeping is. You are a pattern that has to be actively held open, second by second, or it comes apart. Which is a strange and freeing thing to know as you lie here. You are never a solid object that happens to last. You are a shape the universe is holding open for a little while, and being alive is simply the work of staying that shape against everything, for as long as you can. There's an old puzzle that captures this perfectly, and it's worth a minute because it's about you. Picture a wooden boat. Over the years, one plank rots and someone replaces it. Then another rots and gets replaced. Then another and another. Slowly, over a long time, every single plank of that boat gets swapped out for new wood, until not one piece of the original boat is left. Here's the question. Is it still the same boat? Most people want to say yes, it happened gradually. It stayed a boat the whole time. So of course it's the same one. But now, here's the twist. Imagine someone had saved all the old rotten planks, and at the very end, they built a second boat out of them. Now, which one is the real original? The boat that was there the whole time, now made entirely of new wood? Or the one built from all the original pieces? Suddenly, there's no clean answer at all. And here's the thing. That boat is you. Your body has swapped out its material piece by piece your entire life. So which you is the real one? The one that was here the whole time, or the one made of the original stuff? The question has no sharp answer because you were never a fixed set of pieces to begin with. You are always more like the boat, a shape that holds steady while everything inside it flows through and gets replaced. And it's not only the story of why you do things that your brain makes up, it even makes up where your body ends. There's a simple experiment you can almost do at home. You sit at a table with one of your hands hidden behind a screen. In front of you, in plain sight, someone places a fake rubber hand. Then they gently stroke your hidden real hand and the fake visible one at exactly the same time, with a soft brush over and over. And within a couple of minutes, something odd happens to most people. Your brain starts to feel like the rubber hand is yours. If someone suddenly moves to smack the fake hand, you flinch. For a piece of rubber. Your brain has adopted it as part of your body. Think about what that means. Even the basic feeling of, this is my hand, this is where I stop and the world begins. Even that is something your brain is building, moment to moment. And it can be fooled in 2 minutes with a paintbrush. The edges of you are drawn by your brain. They are not fixed by the world. And there's one more crack in the solid feeling of being one steady you. And it's about memory, which matters, because your memories are a huge part of what makes you feel like you. Here's the thing, almost nobody realizes Your memories are not recordings. Your brain doesn't press play on a saved video. Every single time you remember something, you actually rebuild it from scratch, out of scattered pieces, and then you save it again, slightly changed. A small detail shifts. Something gets added that was never there. And you never catch it, because the rebuilt version feels every bit as real as the last one, which leads somewhere wild. The memories you're most sure of, the big ones you've replayed 100 times, are often the least accurate because you've rewritten them 100 times. People can even have rock-solid, detailed, deeply emotional memories of things that simply never happened. So the past you carry around, the story you feel you're built out of, isn't a locked record sitting safe in a drawer. It's a story you edit a tiny bit every time you tell it. Even your own history is being gently rewritten by the storyteller who never once admits it's writing. And you don't even have to look back years to catch the self shifting. You're a different person depending on the hour. Tired, you become someone smaller and more irritable, who believes darker things about your own life. And you take those thoughts completely seriously, as if they were the plain truth, right up until you sleep and wake as someone steadier, who can't quite remember why it all felt so heavy. Hungry, you make harsher choices. Afraid, your whole world narrows, and a version of you takes over who would swear, in that moment, that the danger is everything there is. None of these feels like a costume you're putting on. Each one feels like simply you, seen clearly. But they can't all be the real you. They disagree with each other, which means the you running the show isn't one fixed person at all. It's more like a rotating cast, handed the microphone by whatever your body and brain happen to be doing that hour. And each one, while it holds the mic, is completely convinced it's the whole show. The steady, single self you feel yourself to be is in part just memory, smoothing all those different people into one. So here's where the honest science and the old meditators briefly shake hands, and they mean very different things, but they agree on the strange middle fact. The meditator says, behind the passing self, there's a watcher. The scientist says, the self you thought was solid is a story your brain builds, and in deep states that story can go quiet, and awareness stays without it. Very different ideas, but both land on the same astonishing thing, and this part is as solid as anything up here. The you feel yourself to be is not a fixed, solid object. It's something being made all the time, and it can be set down. You might be wondering, if the self is really just a story the brain makes up, then why do we have it at all? Why would evolution bother building a you that isn't even fully real? And there's a good plain answer, because it's incredibly useful, even if it isn't the deep truth. A brain that builds a model of itself can do things a brain without one simply can't. It can plan ahead. If I do this now, I'll be better off later. It can learn from its past. That food made me sick, so I won't eat it again. It can feel responsible for what it did yesterday and care about what happens to it tomorrow. All of that needs a me to hang the experiences on. A single centre that ties it all together and says this happened to me, and I'm the one it keeps happening to. So evolution grew a self the same way it grew hands and eyes. Not because it's true, but because the animals that had one survived better. The self is a brilliantly useful tool. It's just a tool that happens to be very good at convincing you it's the whole truth, which is exactly what you'd expect from a tool you have to believe in for it to work, which means the kid in the photo isn't quite you, and isn't quite not you either. There's no sharp answer, no matter how sharp the feeling is. You're less a thing that lasts, and more a story that keeps getting told, each chapter growing out of the one before. And there's a real, gentle freedom in that, if you let it in as you drift off tonight. The self you sometimes feel trapped inside is lighter and more open than it pretends to be. It was never a locked room. It's a story still being written, and tonight, at least, it can rest. Stand outside on a clear dark night, far from any city lights, and look straight up. Give it a moment. For most people, if the sky's wide and dark enough, something happens. The size of it reaches in and stops you. The chatter in your head goes quiet. Your worries shrink for a second, not in a crushing way, in a way that's almost a relief. You feel, briefly and cleanly, small. That feeling has a name. It's awe. And it turns out to be a real measurable thing the mind does. And it's the doorway into the 6th level. Now the climb gets thinner here, and I'm going to slow down and be more careful. Because from this point up, the reports get richer and the hard measurements get thinner. And being honest means saying so out loud. The 6th level, as people describe it, isn't a change in what you're aware of. It's a change in the feel of the awareness itself. The calm watcher from the 5th level doesn't just watch the world evenly anymore. Everything it looks at starts to feel full, alive, lit up with meaning. The tree outside the window stops being just an object and starts to feel present, almost like it's glowing softly. The line between you and what you're looking at gets soft, and the main feeling people report isn't calm distance now. It's something huge and warm, something close to falling in love, not with a person, but with everything. Plain seeing turns into something people reach for religious words to describe, because normal words won't stretch far enough. I have to be the most careful here, so here's the honest ledger. What's proven and what isn't? Is there anything real we can measure under this? A little, and it's interesting. There's real science on the feeling of awe, the one you just felt looking up. And awe does real measurable things. It makes your sense of me shrink, in a good way, a relief kind of way. It quiets that same self-focused part of the brain, and it reliably makes people feel more connected to others, and more generous, and more like a small part of something big. So the ingredients, feeling small, feeling connected, feeling flooded with meaning, those are real, studied, and repeatable. That much I'll give you as proven. And 2 of the things awe does are surprising. 1, it seems to stretch how time feels, so that people who've just felt a wave of awe report feeling less rushed afterward, like they suddenly have more room to breathe. And 2, this is the one that got me, there's research linking awe to lower levels of the body's inflammation markers. Meaning a regular diet of awe may be measurably good, not just for your mood, but for your physical health. Feeling small, it turns out, might be one of the healthiest things a person can feel. And there's a striking real-world version of this whole level that doesn't involve a single meditator. It's astronauts. Almost everyone who's gone to space and looked back at the whole Earth, hanging there in the black, describes the same thing happening to them, so reliably that it's been given a name, the overview effect. They report the borders vanishing, the sense of separate countries, separate selves melting away. A wave of overwhelming tenderness for the fragile little world and everyone on it, and a shift that a lot of them say never fully wore off. These are pilots and engineers, not mystics, not people who went up looking for anything spiritual, but give a human being a wide enough view. And this state seems to arrive on its own, uninvited, which tells you something worth holding on to. The 6th level probably isn't a rare gift handed to a chosen few. It looks more like something folded up inside all of us, just waiting for a view big enough to open it. So the 6th level, as people describe it, is the everyday awe, the kind you've already felt, turned all the way up and left there, so that a leaf, a wall, a stranger's face all carry it. You already own the small version. This is just that, with the volume turned all the way up and never turned back down. But the 6th level claim goes way past measured awe. It says the world is actually alive and sacred, and giving off a meaning it always had, and that ordinary seeing was just too narrow to catch it. And that claim that the glow is something really out there and not just a beautiful thing the brain can do, that's exactly the kind of guess I promise to hand you instead of pretend to prove. I can tell you the feeling is real, and people say it's overwhelming. I cannot tell you the universe is actually looking back at you. Nobody can. Anyone who tells you they've proven that is selling you something. And you'll notice the careful scientists never do. Here's what I'll offer instead, and I think it's truer, and honestly more beautiful than the oversell. Whether or not there's some hidden sacredness behind the tree, the ability of a human mind to see the plain, ordinary world as glowing, to have regular reality suddenly fill up with meaning and tenderness, is itself one of the most remarkable things about being conscious. A brain that got built by evolution just to find food and dodge danger can somehow drop into a state where a patch of afternoon light on a wall stops your whole self and fills you with something close to love. You don't have to settle the big question to be amazed by that. The mystery isn't only out there in whether the world is secretly alive. It's in here, in the fact that this 3-pound thing in your skull can feel something that huge at all. And here's one more honest note. Nearly every culture all over the world, going way back, has described this level under different names in different religions. And the striking thing, the thing worth sitting with, is how similar the descriptions are, from people who never met and never spoke. That doesn't prove the guess is true. Very similar experiences can come from the fact that we all share very similar brains. But it does mean this isn't nothing. It isn't just a few odd people making things up. Something real and repeatable happens to human minds at this height. What it means is the open question, and the overlap in what people report is more specific than you'd expect. A Christian mystic in a cold stone cell 1,000 years ago, a Buddhist monk on a mountain, a person today with no religion at all who simply stood too long under too many stars. They reach for startlingly similar words. A light that isn't ordinary light. A love with no object, pointed at everything at once. A sense that, just for a moment, nothing was missing and nothing needed fixing. The hard line around the self going soft. People who could never have read one another's words, split apart by oceans and centuries and languages, keep filing very nearly the same report. That doesn't prove there's something out there they all touched. The simpler explanation is that they all carry the same kind of brain, push it into the same corner, and it does the same thing. But it does mean this is a real repeatable feature of what a human mind can do. Not a rare glitch, not a tale a few people invented. Something is there to be found, over and over, by very different people, taking very different paths to it. What it is, that's the part nobody has ever managed to close. And an honest, open question is a better place to rest tonight than a confident wrong answer. And so we reach the top of the stairs, the last step, the thinnest one, the one furthest from anything a machine can follow. So this is the one I'll mark most carefully of all. At the 7th level, people report that even the watcher goes. Think about what that means. All the way up, the 4th level, the 5th, the 6th, there was always still a someone, a watcher, a you who was having these big experiences, even as that you got quieter and more open. At the 7th level, the reports say, that last line disappears, the line between you and everything else. The most basic line in all of experience, the one you never even think to question, because it's the floor under every other thought, is just not there anymore. Not I feel connected to everything. More like there's no separate I left standing apart to feel it. Just everything. All one, with nobody outside it looking in. People run out of normal words here and start talking in riddles because our language always has an I and a thing built into it. And this is a report about a state with neither. I've promised to be honest at every step, and this step needs the most honesty of all. So here it is straight. The proven part, there is real brain science on this. There are states, reachable through deep meditation and through some other means, where people report exactly this, the loss of the line between self and world. And when they're in those states, scans show that same self part of the brain, the one we keep coming back to, going quiet, and its usual walls coming down. So the experience is real enough to trigger, real enough that people describe it the same way again and again, real enough to show up on a scan. People enter states where the feeling of being a separate self dissolves. That is not in doubt. And it's worth knowing that meditation isn't the only door people reach this through, which is part of what makes it hard to just wave away. Some people describe something strikingly similar after coming very close to death, during a cardiac arrest, say, in the minutes before they're brought back. A real number of them report the same core thing, the sense of being a separate self falling away, a feeling of merging into something huge and calm, and very often the fear simply gone. Now I want to be careful here and keep my promise to you. These are reports. We can't get inside them to check, and there are honest, down-to-earth explanations for a lot of what people describe. A brain under extreme stress can produce experiences that are powerful, strange, and feel completely real. So I am not offering this as proof of anything about what happens after we die. I'm not going there because nobody honestly can. I'm only pointing at one small but striking fact, that people reach this same edge, the self-dissolving, the deep calm, the sense of being part of one whole, through completely different doors. Deep meditation is one door. The very edge of life is another, and they tend to come back describing it in almost the same words. That doesn't tell us what it means, but different doors opening onto what sounds like the same room is exactly the kind of thing worth noticing and sitting with quietly, instead of rushing to explain it away or rushing to sell it as more than we know. The honest move is just to let it stand there, real and unexplained. The meaning of it, now that I will not tell you, is true, because nobody knows it's true, and I'd be letting you down if I pretended. There are two honest ways to read it, and I owe you both. The first reading: this is the truth finally showing through. You really are one with everything, and being a separate little self was always the illusion, and in this state, you're seeing what was always the case. The second reading: the brain's self story just switched off for a while. The same self we found was built back at level 5, so experience keeps running without its usual centre. Amazing. Life-changing even. But not proof of anything beyond a brain whose self-making machine briefly went quiet. Here's the thing. Both readings fit the exact same experience. The machines can't tell them apart. Maybe nothing can. So I won't pick one for you. And here's what I find beautiful about staying honest instead of picking a side, because you don't have to choose one to be moved by this. Look at what both readings agree on. It's the same solid ground we've been standing on since level 5, now stretched as far as it goes. Whether the self dissolves into some cosmic oneness, or the self just dissolves, both of them say the same astonishing thing about you. That separate, solid you that feels like the obvious centre of everything is not the bottom fact. It's built. It can come apart. And when it does, something still remains. Awareness, experience, being here, that doesn't need it. You are not at the bottom, as sealed off and alone as the everyday feeling of being a self keeps insisting you are. That much the reports and the brain science share. Whether what's underneath is the whole universe, or just a mind with its centre switched off, that's the one question we carried all the way up 7 levels and cannot answer, and I would rather leave you at the top of the stairs holding a true question than a comforting lie. the true one if you let it, is the more comforting of the two anyway. So look back down the whole staircase from up here before we drift down into sleep, and notice the one thing that stayed the same the entire way. At every single level, the stuff inside changed completely. The busy, crowded waking world, the made-up world of the dream, the total blank of the deep dark, the quiet, empty awareness of the fourth level, the steady watcher of the fifth, the glowing tenderness of the sixth, the dissolved self of the seventh. 7 completely different states, and something was there through all of them. Something was there to have the waking world, there to wander the dream, there thin as a thread, even to notice the nothing of the deep, and there wide open at every step above. The rooms changed at every landing. The lights you carried from room to room did not. That's the thread running through this whole climb, and it's the thing to take down into sleep with you tonight. Not a claim about the universe or about God. I've kept those in your hands, not mine. Just the plain, quiet, checkable fact that under all the endlessly changing stuff in your mind, there is the bare fact of awareness, the simple lit feeling that there is something here, experiencing anything at all. And it has been with you, unbroken, through every state you have ever been in. It was there when you were the little kid in the photo, even though almost nothing else of that kid is left. It's here right now, listening to these words. It's the one thing you have never once been without in your whole life, except maybe in the deepest dark. And even there, something faint kept the place. Think of it like a small light you've been carrying, without knowing it, through every room of your life. You've spent so long looking at what the light falls on, the world, your worries, the story of you, that you never once noticed the light itself, steady in your hand the whole time. And here's the gentle part. You don't have to climb to the 7th level tonight to hold it. You don't have to quiet your mind, or lose yourself, or reach any special state at all. The same awareness those meditators chase for decades up these stairs is the plain, ordinary awareness that is, right now, quietly lighting up these words as they reach you. It was never far away. It's the nearest thing there is. It's the thing doing the noticing this very second as you notice it. And here's the last honest thing, the one to fall asleep on. We climbed from solid, measured science up into places nobody can map, and we came back without a final answer. The hardest question, why it feels like anything to be you, is still unsolved. Exactly as unsolved as when we started. Quantum physics couldn't crack it. The brain scanners couldn't either. And that's okay. It's more than okay. You spent your whole life assuming being awake was a simple thing. A light just switched on. And it turns out to be the deepest mystery we know of. Layered, strange, unsolved, and you carry the whole of it easily every day just by being here. And maybe that's the quiet gift of the whole climb. Not an answer, but a loosening. Most of the weight we carry comes from taking the daytime self completely seriously. The fixed, solid, separate me that has to defend itself, prove itself, hold the whole world together on its own. But you've seen tonight that that self is lighter than it pretends. It goes offline every night in the deep dark, and you come back fine. It's a story the brain tells, and stories can soften. It's a pattern, not a possession. Even the great dividing line between you and everything else is something the mind draws and can, in rare moments, set gently down. None of that makes your life any less real or any less yours. If anything, it makes it easier to carry. The way a hand holds something more gently, once it knows it doesn't have to grip. You don't have to solve it. You don't have to reach the top. Tonight, it's enough to have seen that the staircase is even there, that you're stranger and bigger and less alone than the ordinary daytime you ever admits, and to rest for a little while as the small steady light that's been quietly carrying you the whole way. Let the light stay low now. Let the story of you set itself down for the night, the way it does every night, whether you notice or not. You don't have to hold any of it up. You only have to lie still and let the deepest level come, the one where even the self is gently laid aside, and something in you rests that has been carrying you since the day you began. Close your eyes. The light doesn't go out. It just stops looking at things for a while.